I have this racist stepsister. She's about to get married, and it's going to be a huge event. Well, she's basically in this predicament being forced to make me the maid of honor. Well, I don't really like her, but I guess I have to do it, so you know what? I might as well get some revenge while I'm at it. I have to admit that sometimes I've been known as someone with a strong character, and maybe that's why I don't have that many friends. My life has not been 100% comfortable for one thing or the other. My mother passed away when I was about 4 years old, and it only took my dad a couple years to remarry another woman. A divorced woman who also had a daughter older than me. Emily. Emily's the stereotypical airheaded blonde, pretty, popular, and very, very vain. She does have one thing that makes her stand out from the international legion of blondes, though. Her racism. That's right. She doesn't want to admit it, but I know deep down she's very racist. I know some of you will be like, wow, now that's a plot twist. Yeah, I've known this fact since we were kids. That's right. She's 4 years older than me, and when I wanted to play with her as a child, she would just always push me away. You might think it's part of the innocence of children, but I know it goes deeper than that. You see, I'm half black on my mom's side, and she had dominant genes, so I largely inherited her skin color. Compared to my dad, who's completely white, well, he's not really white, but Latino. Latino was born in Colombia because in complexion, he's whiter than bread dough. That's why she had no problem fitting in with him and treating him like a biological father faster than she could break the head of one of her dolls. I understand that she's racist, and it's just that our childhood dynamic wasn't the best, as I tell you. She didn't like playing with me, and even though we went to the same school, she never advocated for me and anything. She would not even say that we were sisters, and on my side, you see, I did see her as a model big sister. She was self-sufficient and quite popular, with everyone wanting to be her friend. In part, I should be grateful for this attitude, as it was what made me socially independent. I mean, by adopting certain behaviors from Emily, I was actually able to develop my own social skills, which allowed me to have a small group of friends and a fairly well-defined personality, which ended up being a stark contrast to Emily's. I became hoftier and more self-absorbed, and I was able to be a bit of a social butterfly. I'd say less feminine, a bit cruder, and I used to laugh very loudly, something that made her very uncomfortable. The dynamic in the house as we got older became somewhat calmer, but I say she's racist because when I would bring my friends over, she only seemed to take an interest in the white people. I remember one occasion where she even seemed to flirt with one of my classmates when we got together for a job. The only white classmate. Little subtleties that only I could see. Like not watching movies with the black protagonist, or not liking dark-skinned models. As the years went by, I began to see it more and more alarmingly. At first, with the childish mentality I had, I would say to myself, well, I guess my sister just doesn't like certain stuff. It's fine. But then I learned the meaning of racism and how that fit perfectly into Emily's description. All of her boyfriends were blonde, blue-eyed, mommy and daddy kids. The kind that you might find, well, in 1960. Yeah, a home commercial type vibe. I'm not saying I disliked it, but it's kind of awful, especially when you're the only person of color in your family. There were times when I felt terrible and even cried at night with my dad comforting me. And damn, I'd say even my stepmother felt sorry for me and comforted me as well. They both told me that there was nothing to cry about because they loved me just the same. I even ended up seeing that woman more as a mother. And I learned over the years that Emily's behavior might have to do with her absent father figure, but those are things I don't want to get into so much. But now we're in the present, right? And something is coming up with Emily. It turns out that Miss Supremacy is getting married, and you guessed it, to a blonde, green-eyed guy with a small fortune. Yeah, that's right, no blue eyes this time. And she's very excited about it. Of course, we're both adults now, and our relationship has improved immensely in the last few years, but there was always that little thorn in me that made me not entirely comfortable. The thing is, she called me a few days ago asking if she could meet me for lunch on the weekend. Now, to you, it may seem normal, but believe me, it's not that simple. She and I get along well these days. It's not like we have a sister-sister deal. It's just a hi, bye, mostly during Christmas dinners, which is when we hang out the most. In fact, the last few she has shown a little more interest in me. Conversing, paying attention to what I say. Moreover, in this conversation, she brought up something I said 2 years ago. Something about a new job I was going to start, and she asked me how I was doing in that job. But I told her that I quit only a half year after I started. Something that the whole family already knew. Anyways, at least I feel she showed some interest, and well, she came to me with a little bombshell. She wants me to be her maid of honor. Or at least the main one. She told me that she's been in a psychotherapeutic session as the whole wedding and getting married thing got her on edge. So the subject of her sister came up and how she never seemed to have a good relationship with her. I mean, it's good that you heal your wounds and such, but from wanting to do that to telling your sister to be your maid of honor at one of the biggest events of your life, wow. I can't help but be fluttered. Even though I thought it was fake at first, I told her I wasn't game. But she said no, that she would use the occasion as an opportunity to bond better with her stepsister. I started this text by saying that I have somewhat of a strong character, almost explosive. So I didn't know how to react, and I said yes, obviously, but I'm still a little uncomfortable about it. As time progresses, we will know if it was a good or bad decision. I want to believe it wasn't, but I do want to know what you guys think. I feel like I'm going down paths to the past, and I'm not accommodating a possible good relationship with my sister. I talked it over with my dad, and he's very excited about the idea because of the same thing. He says it's a golden opportunity, and it makes me feel like I'm the only one who suspects about it. I don't want to be the villain in the whole thing either. Update number 1. Guys, I just want to do something brief in this update. I had a little discussion with my dad. We talked about Emily's situation and how she now wants to be, me, her maid of honor. Let's see if that wasn't what we were arguing as such about, but we did touch on some uncomfortable points. I hesitantly started to say that I didn't have much confidence in the whole thing, but I was, quote, willing to do it if it's legitimate. And that was enough to make my parents go absolutely ballistic. They told me I'm selfish, that it looked horrible that I thought badly of my sister after she offered me such a honor. Of course, then I brought up the subject of Emily's racism. And oh boy, that hit them hard. My stepmother was speechless, as if I've touched a nerve. Then Dad explained to me that apparently it wasn't the first time they received the comment. In fact, they heard it a long time ago from third parties, friends of theirs, a few, that is, well, who said, and I quote, "Oh, but that girl doesn't seem to like Samuel L. Jackson or Idris Elba, if you know what I mean, wink wink." The last comment they got was years ago, and it did set their alarm bells ringing. Well, for me, it was something they didn't want to believe, but it made the conversation take another turn, and even though the bridesmaid thing was already settled, I now found myself in the middle of a conversation telling them that indeed I could support Emily, but that doesn't change things. Anyways, things were said, and they told me off, and I told them off too, blah blah blah. In the end, it'll end up happening exactly what was going to happen from the get-go. But hey, I stopped by just to tell you the update and blow off a bit of steam. Update number 2. I knew it. I knew that she was racist daughter. What rage, what annoyance. The worst thing is that I didn't even have a phone to record when she said all those things. I have to calm down, I know, but I'm even shaking in front of the keyboard because of everything that just happened. It all started because Emily, a couple of her friends, and I went to the mall, and we were going to start looking at her wedding stuff. The accessories, the centerpieces, the stationery, etc. Amongst those things in the dress, of course, and that's where the delicate part comes in. After much mediation and reflection, I decided to go with the flow and help Emily with her wedding, and everything she needed. And as a gesture of good faith, I decided to support her with one of the most important aspects of all, the dress. That's right, I would be the one in charge of her dress and the bridesmaid dresses as well. I even went so far as to show her that I managed to find on the internet and compared them with others offered at various stores in town. That's one of the reasons we decided to go to the mall. We left the last on the list even after lunch, and at first it was a lot of and ahs from her friends since they were excited about anything sparkly. For my part, I knew a bit about Emily's taste, and I knew that she was more into plain cream and matte models, so she wanted to go for a more subdued version, which was the opposite of what her friends were telling her. They poisoned her mind to change my mind. She originally told me that money was not a concern, because if it was too expensive for me to pay, she would take care of the rest. So I still decided to be a little thriftier, and so offer her something more economical but equally beautiful, and that would suit her taste. No. But then the magic begins. By chance of life, I just ended up running into a friend in one of the stores, and I leave Emily and her friends for a moment to say hello. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't done this. Maybe everything would have taken a very different, less horrible turn than it did. When I returned after only 5 minutes of talking, I could see that Emily already had her wedding dress on the bar. I asked her if she had decided on the model I told her about, and she pulled me aside for a moment. While everyone was silent, she said, "Look, honey, this is a little awkward. But the truth is, there was a change of plans, and I hope you don't mind. I decided to wear the embroidered flower model. You know, the one that Christina told me about. Besides, I'm considering putting her as the main bridesmaid, but you can still attend, as part of the cast. Do you agree?" "Oh, and don't worry about the difference in the dress. It's only a few bucks." She was telling me this with a face to, combined pity, sorrow, and I quote, "Obviously. I know she's going to be mad, but maybe I won't show it so much." So it went. I started with, "Excuse me," but it all went downhill from there. I asked for an explanation and if she was relegating me from my position as maid of honor, and she said yes. She's very sorry about it, but when I said, it was for missing me by 5 minutes to talk to a friend, she just said, "Well, I needed you here, and you decided to abandon us." It was 5 minutes. How can you change a decision like that in 5 minutes? I started to complain to her, maybe not with the best attitude, and she continued the conversation, actually raising her voice. The people in the store heard us, and her friends began to intervene as well. It wasn't until things went almost violent when she let out a certain word towards me, several slurs against, and I quote, "people like me." That left more than one of us absolutely dumbfounded, and that's why I curse not having to be able to get a phone in time to record it. Surely, by putting that on the internet, she would have been cancelled in a heartbeat, as it was the official declaration that she's a racist through and through. And the worst part is that she still dared to ask if I was okay with the idea. In the end, I talked to my parents and there was some, apology from Emily. But when they forced me to apologize, I flatly refused. Still, I was told I could be part of the celebration since in the end I was the one who paid for the dress. I was annoyed by this last part, as I was asking for a refund of the money I gave them, but I decided to do something even better. An evil thing that would make their wedding one of the saddest days Emily has ever experienced. I don't plan to do anything too far-fetched, and I feel anxious to just tell this, at least on a textual level. It may be too risky, but what the heck, I'll tell ya. Since I have access to the venue even before the guests arrive, I'll walk into Emily's dressing room, without anyone thinking anything, because no one's going to believe that the bride's annoying sister is going to show up there. As far as I'm concerned, everyone will think that I will, if anything goes in, say a few words, show up in a dress, and then head back home, but no. I'd rather do something much better. I'm going to replace her dress with something else. I'll see how I hide it and what I'll replace it with, but hey, if it's fixed, I'll do something about it. It makes my stomach turn because I know that if anyone finds out, it'll be the end of me, and maybe something much worse. I also have to mediate if anyone can help me with that. Anyways, I doubt that'll happen. but only because people close to Emily who honestly love her will go. Well, eventually I'll come up with something and I'll write back with an update when this is all over, telling you how my caper went. I know well that of the power of words, and so I state right here and right next of the following: I will take revenge on my sister for insulting me in the worst way possible. Update number 3. Officially the world's most chaotic wedding. I'll use my journalism classes from thousands of years ago to chronicle everything that happened in the best way possible, but be warned, you're about to read the ride of your life. After several weeks of anticipation, the wedding day. Many were nervous for some reason, and I could not wait to make my move, which, by the way, was so much worse than I imagined, and I understand that if there had to be a culprit in this, it was me. What? At least I admit it, and that's why I did what I did to Emily, starting with what I told you in the previous note about the dress. In the end, I decided to put aside that thing about telling someone else to help me, as I felt I could not trust anyone with such a task, even if it was just telling me if the coast was clear. Well, I slipped through the place and went straight to the bride's dressing room, where I found the makeup, the accessories, and the bag with the dress inside. I replaced it with another. Feeling like a hero, or villain depending on who's watching, in a spy movie, and got out of there faster than Flash, without other guests even spotting me. In that sense, I felt too lucky, and after that, I even left the area for a nearby park. In case someone asked for me, I'd say I was on my way, and then chaos. I knew what happened because I started getting messages and calls from everyone, and when Emily popped up, I replied. Yeah, she was furious and screaming as always, calling me more rude names and insulting me for ruining her dress. What I did was replace it with an old ripped, white-painted dress. You know, my only regret was not putting cameras in the room to see her reaction, although that was already too elaborate of a plan even for me. And you'll call me crazy, but I just feel like I heard her scream from where I was on the main avenue because there was a moment when the atmosphere in the whole street changed. It was the equivalent of hearing that someone had been run over and that a pregnancy test had accidentally come positive. But no, it was just a furious bride, still in her robe and with her hairdo already finished, starting to scream in dismay and crying out for the blood of the one who did this outrageous thing to her. Meanwhile, I was preparing the second part of my plan. That's right, there was more. Everyone left the place driven by an Emily who was red as a tomato, while she had her string of friends and family next to her, only to discover her dear sister, the mastermind behind it all, in front of the projector in the middle of the street, which showed, quote, something just to a white wall that we had in the area. And let me clarify two things. The first is that although I had no help with the dress, at least I had some friends who lent me the projector and helped me install it, without knowing what it was about. The second thing is that there was a Bachelorette party for Emily a while ago, and I didn't bring it up because of the sensitivity of the subject. Anyways, it turns out that at the party some guys were invited, and among them Emily's husband's brother and her brother-in-law. Well, let's just say that Emily is a bit of a bad drinker, so she ends up kissing one of the guys in question, which I managed to catch on my phone in perfect time. Wow. At first, I did not even do it intentionally. It was because I was having a good time and started recording with another of my friends, and then they appeared in the back of the video. Then my friend and I appeared laughing at the situation because we were also a little drunk. The next day, when I discovered this on my phone, I was absolutely shocked. Well, I didn't say anything for obvious reasons, and I didn't want to fall into the stereotype of, quote, the sister who takes revenge by leaking an infidelity photo. And I could not just anonymously leak it just like that, because in the video it's clear that I'm the one recording. So, after much mediation and after the dress thing happened, I knew that I would no longer stay quiet about it. If I was going to commit one of the biggest follies of my life, I was going to do it right. In a matter of no time, a bunch of people were gathered around us, amazed at what the brunette girl was showing off in the project. I felt like I was in one of those 90s teen revenge flicks, and I just said, "Congratulations, sister," and let the video run. At first, she didn't understand what's going on, but when she detailed the background of the video, she panicked and let out the biggest scream of her life. Her husband came out of the place and she starts telling him not to watch the projector, not to watch it. In no time, it was mass chaos with the lady, I think one of the groom's aunts, I don't know, collapsing on the middle of the sidewalk. Emily turned around and saw me in front of the projector, next to the image of me laughing after filming her making out with her brother-in-law. Now, the rest of what I'm telling you happened very, very fast, but hey, I'll do my best. She came at me in fury, and I heard a scream from behind, which I think was from her mother-in-law, but I didn't understand why. My stepmom tried to tackle Emily, but she broke out of her grip and knocked her to the ground. She then lunged at me, and I admit that part is hilarious for me to write. We start fighting in the middle of the street, and in a matter of seconds, everyone was watching as, a bride in a robe was fighting a girl 3 times her build, so it wasn't hard to figure out who the winner might be. Among the results of the fight, I accepted that she dug her nails into me and somewhere scratched me pretty hard. And while I did pull her hair, I ended up dragging her across the floor, scraping her knees as someone stopped the fight. I could see a dad intervening, telling us the usual that we should be embarrassed and that we're sisters. Blah, blah, blah. I got a lot of scolding because, well, I was the one who came up with the whole thing. It was the usual. But then I saw the other part of the fight. The woman who yelled earlier was indeed Emily's mother-in-law, who watched in horror as her 2 sons were fighting. Now, if our fight was rough, theirs was rougher, because they were 2 muscular guys who did not mind hitting each other until they almost knocked out a tooth. Then came the deeper stuff, like how the groom's brother was actually in love with Emily for a long time, and that it wasn't the first time that they kissed. It wasn't the first time they kissed! Even I was shocked by all that, and quickly attention was diverted to the other conflict. At one point, I tried to get the hell out of there, saying, "This is none of my business." My father forced me to stay, something that made me angry, so I ended up witnessing how everything unfolded in a way that I didn't even imagine myself. We were all in the middle of a soap opera of the worst kind, with several people fighting amongst the guests. It was as if everyone was already upset about something, and that was the catalyst to make a war. The last thing I saw before my parents told me to go home was Emily crying, saying obscenities and stuff against me with the same derogatory language as before, and even though I turned one of the happiest days into one of the worst days of her life, basically everyone there, I felt no remorse for having done it. I'm writing this now, but I haven't stopped receiving messages about it. Mostly bad ones, but there are many people applauding me for standing up to that racist, as Emily was later called. I felt the divine justice has finally arrived, and I'll write you in a few days to tell you how it all ended. Update 4. Guys, I think this is my farewell. One last update so I don't leave you intrigued about how this final season went. It turned out that my sister ended up worse than we thought, as it seemed that her husband ended up leaving her. Something that was much commented on social networks and that forced her to remain anonymous for a very long time. But it doesn't end there, as it was discovered that she was using Dad's bank account to pay for many of the wedding things, and even after the wedding. Well, this triggered a family problem of unimaginable proportions, until my parents got fed up with her and sent her packing. Of course, I didn't know all the details about it since I spent this whole period banished from the family for everything I've done. I wasn't upset as such by that reaction, though, as it was the least I expected after the crazy day. I rather thought it would be something more serious, but mind you, it ended up being silent treatment, but the silence popped. Dad came in and apologized to me, along with him, my stepmom, who said that even though they don't approve of what I did, it's at least understandable that I've reached my limit after everything I've had to go through since childhood. All because I've wanted to be the good sister. The last I heard from Emily was that she was living in a rented room somewhere in the city, totally single and with a huge strain on her social status. She still has many of her friends, but is having a hard time letting go of all the embarrassment that was her wedding. It's no wonder, not every day someone ruins your most special moment, and coming from your stepsisters makes it even harsher. But I feel like this was a lesson I wanted you guys, or anyone in this position, to take. For all the racist communities out there, this is what can happen to you when you meet the wrong person. It's quite easy to just go with the flow and let anyone be themselves. Like, are we to blame for having this skin? Anyways, that's it, guys. It's over. So Emily was kicked out by her father, and OP was declared the father's kid of choice, because we know how embarrassed Emily was to the rest of her family for the stunt that she pulled. She made out with another guy, her husband didn't like it, broke up with her, and all this was in front of everyone. I mean, can you guys imagine being there at this wedding and just witnessing all this go down? It must have been insane. I do want to know your thoughts about this wedding fiasco in the comment section down below. Guys, my name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of stories every day. So if you want to be a part of these animated readings, all you gotta do is subscribe to the channel. Thank you for that. I'll see you guys tomorrow, but do remember one thing. It's cool to be kind. See ya.